Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Rachel, and today we have Ebony Nichols back with us for part two. Welcome, Ebony.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here again. It's a
Yes.
fun.
And if you missed the first part, just a quick recap. Ebony is the founder, illustrator, creator, chief joy officer at
I love
Announce
it.
Divinely. Yes, I feel like that's perfect for you because your brand is all about bringing the joy. And so she sells great products. There are greeting cards, there's confetti, all the things to help bring joy to, your high and low moments in life, which I think is so important.
It is.
And yeah, it is. It really is. One thing I love about your products, which if you see a video clip, it's in the background, you can see some examples of the products, which are beautiful. And one thing you'll notice, and something I noticed when we connected on Instagram, and I loved about your brand, is that it's so inclusive. You put people who look like on your cards. And I know as someone who my entire life, I loved cards. I used to spend hours in the store growing up, like
Mhm.
reading through every card. My mom would be like, come on, girl, come. I had to read through every card to find the perfect one. But there was never anyone who looked like me. There was never Black women on the cards. And that made me sad, even at a young age, that I couldn't find myself in the card. It felt weird to me. Even as a kid, it didn't feel right that I could never find a card or send someone a card where the picture on it represented me, or like I want it to look like me and my friends. And
Mhm.
so one of the reasons why your brand has stood out for me is that it represent, like I can find a card on your website that represents me, and that is so special.
Yes. And that's very intentional as well because I remember um go back in time to high school when I went to a very diverse high school. So I had friend groups that reflected that. So after graduation, a group of my friends and I went to Six Flags and we were coming back. We stopped at this huge gas station on the interstate and we went in. Everyone was like, hey, let's get some little souvenirs with our names on it. Now I knew immediately with a name like Ebony, I was not going to find anything with my name on it. But I know they didn't expect that because they found the Sarahs, they found
Yeah.
the Timothys, they those were easily accessible. And so when we didn't find anything with my name on it, they were shocked. But I already knew kind of what time it was.
Yep.
And while at that moment I didn't say, I'm gonna go home and create a line of inclusive cards. So it's computer stuff. I still carried and internalized, like you said, that expectation that I should be able to find these things. It should not be that hard. And so when I decided to start Announce Divinely, I knew that eventually I wanted to create a line where everyone could see themselves in stationery, where seeing a Black woman on a card should become natural
Yeah.
because we're here. We celebrate joyful moments. We want to send just because cards. We want to see ourselves on birthday cards. And so anything that I can do to bring as much of that into reality, that's what I'm committed to do. And so if you go to announcedivinely.com, you will see a lot of cards that are committed to that purpose. And throughout the years, I've been able to grow that. So I call it the Melanin Collection. So
Ah,
you can
okay.
go exactly to that place and you should be able to find yourself in stationery.
Oh, that is so great. Yes, please check that out. Announce Divinely Melanin Collection.
Mhm.
Oh, I wish that was around when I was younger, but it wasn't. So I'm glad it's here now. So thank you. I
Yeah.
love how intentional that you've been. And, as we talked about, your brand is all about sparking joy. How joyful is it to see yourself represented
Mm-hmm.
wherever you're at? And, we talk about joy. Building a brand around joy is a really big way to have an impact in how much joy people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What are smaller ways that you've seen that show up or how people maybe can cultivate some of that joy in their day-to-day lives?
So I think first and foremost, I say that joy is personal.
Mm,
So what brings me joy may not necessarily bring you joy. And we have to be okay with that. I think one of the things about joy is, especially when we try to share it and it's not reciprocated, that same passion, that same zeal, that we feel like, oh, that this must not be right, or maybe I need to calm down. But joy really is whatever it is that you think about or you do, and it makes you feel like you're golden. And so
mm.
joyful moments can happen in very big ways, right? During a big celebration or having a big bash or going on a girls' trip to an island, but it can also happen in small ways. For me, I get joy from sharing like a new TV show with someone that I love. And they may not get it, right? They
Yeah.
may not laugh at the same things that I laugh at, but I just feel so happy that this thing brings me joy and I can share that with them. So there are very micro ways that we can find joy. So I would tell someone, what is it? What is that one thing that you do or you see or you hear and you just feel goosebumps all over,
Yeah.
right? You feel like I can do this every day of my life. That's what brings you joy. That is joy for you. And so we may not be able to do those things every day, but when you feel like kind of like your tank is low, try to incorporate those moments more in your life and they'll kind of bring you back up a little bit.
So, what's an example of a joy moment for you? Those moments where you get those goosebumps you described.
I get goosebumps when I love to cook.
Mm,
So it was something that I did with my grandmother when I was small. And now I like trying new recipes. So if I try a new recipe and my family and friends love it, that's joy for me, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if it takes me all day to prepare it, if I've spent so much money on a special type of cheese, like just knowing that they all I need them to say, oh, this is good, like that brings me joy. I also feel joy when someone tells me that they found something that brings them joy. I found when I
Mhm.
worked for the universities that I love mentorship opportunities. So helping someone like unlock another part of themselves or helping them see something new about themselves or feel free to express themselves, that brings me joy too. So food and socializing. So those
Yeah.
things bring me joy.
And the beauty is they often go together.
Oh,
So
they
you
can go
get double
together.
joy.
Shindigs. Yes.
I know that was something I try to journal every day. I don't always do. And I mean, I don't mean a fancy journal. I mean, I might write a sentence in a note on my phone
Yeah.
or I may write in my physical journal. But something that I've realized lately, just reflecting on this topic of joy, is that I think my greatest joy in life is to support someone I love and doing something that brings them joy. Like your that secondhand joy to me is the
Mhm.
best form of joy
It
that you
really
can
is.
get.
I love that you said that because it kind of creates this chain of joy. Like you see this domino effect, right? So you're doing something that you think brings someone else joy and they express that joy and then you feel joy. So now your tank is being filled up. So you're
Yeah.
not depleted, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes when um we give, we may feel depleted. But if it's something that brings you joy, that means you're being filled at the same time. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I know sometimes people can be a little cynical about the topic of joy. And I get it. Like, there have been times in my life where joy felt hard to find, it felt hard to come by. I had to fight for it. It felt like this is a challenge. But the beauty is, I've learned, at least for me, my joy doesn't come from me necessarily or my circumstances. Like
Mhm.
for me, a lot of it comes from my faith and or it comes through, like you said, like this experiencing joy with other people. Something interesting I found because we were like, we want to talk about joy. And I did some looking into it. And Brene Brown, if you haven't heard about her,
Yeah.
she's a researcher, mostly
Mhm.
all around like shame and vulnerability. She
Mhm.
also talks about leadership, but something that she's written about is how joy is the most vulnerable emotion.
It is.
Yeah, which is I told someone that and they were like, "What? I don't believe you." I'm like, "Let me send you this article about the research because
Yeah.
it is true." And she said she studies scary emotions like anger and shame for a living, but the most terrifying human experience is joy. It's if we believe that by truly feeling happiness, we're setting ourselves up for a sucker punch. The problem is worrying about things that haven't happened doesn't protect us from pain.
Mm-mm. It's gonna because if it's gonna happen, it's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And as we were talking about earlier, like life happens, and there is this idea of if I express joy, if I get too excited about something, then I'm just setting myself up, right? It's
Yeah.
going to disappear as if there's a scarcity of joy. And I think that's one of the things that I really try to harp on is there's not a scarcity of joy.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be afraid of it. What brings you joy brings you joy. And the more that you kind of exercise that joy, the bigger your joy muscles are, right? The more you can activate the joy and you can access it. And I think that is totally true. You'll have some people that are cynical about joy. And I understand that
Mhm.
because we all have situations in life that beat us down. But I'm also a believer that what's personal for you, what brings you joy, what makes you smile, you can activate that. And once you get into the habit of activating it, it becomes a little easier.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I totally understand if someone was like, mm-mm, I don't want to set myself up like that. I understand that, but I will also say just give it a try. Just give
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you described it almost as a skill that you learn where you get better over time. And I don't know about you, but I feel like as I've kind of learned in my own life how to capture joy, embrace joy, I've realized that the more I practice that, which a lot of times it's found through gratitude, the more I
Mhm,
practice that, when the hard times come, it's like I have a reserve, like you said, like I have a reserve tank
mhm,
of joy waiting for me so
mhm,
that when a hard time comes, like for me, when I got laid off, it didn't take me out the way it could have. I felt fine. And it wasn't because life was perfect or fine or I'm a millionaire and don't have to worry about money ever again. It really was that I have joy reserves, gratitude reserves, so
mhm,
that I can pull from that whenever life isn't giving me that. And I also have people around me who can help me pull from that. So I actually, the week I got laid off, I threw a party. I
mhm,
like when you talk about joy, I texted my friends who live close to me. I'm in Dallas. I texted my local friends. I said, "Hey, I got laid off this week. I would love if you would come to my house for a party." That's how I would feel supported. And if you can make it, great. If not, I know it's last minute, but this would really be what I need. And the way I framed it is I had like a whole invite I created. I called it the making room party. So I said, we are all, not just me, we are all making room for what we want in our lives this year because it was
yeah,
January. So it was a new year. And I
yeah,
said, I want us to all come together and celebrate what are we making room for? Because I did not want to spend another minute, another second of my life looking back at
mhm,
something that was no longer for me. I was like,
mhm,
why am I going to spend my time upset about that? And if someone's upset, I get it. But for me, I wanted to put every ounce of energy into building a new life. So we had a hippie party. I ordered flower crowns for everyone to wear.
yeah,
We had sunglasses. I
I
had a whole spread. Like I found a new recipe, a new
mm-hmm.
salad I made. We had so much food. We had drinks and we laughed so much. We wrote letters to ourselves. We had like I gave out door prizes and people went home with goodie bags.
You're a chief joy officer too, Rachel, because I love that. I love how you reframed something that most people would say, close the blinds, pull out the hoodie,
Yeah.
but you looked at it as a transition and you looked at it as like making room. Girl,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. I love it.
Well, it's like, what else am I going to do? And I'm like, I don't want to give this job any more time. I don't work there anymore. So what I did is after I got off, I'm a remote employee. So we had a Zoom call. After I got off the call, I gave myself a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I shed a few tears.
Mm-hmm.
I gave myself a moment to just release the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then me and one of my friends went out to dinner at my favorite restaurant that night. And that's when I started planning this party of like, how am I? Because the question, which I think you were so good at this throughout your journey, the last episode, if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to that one and this one. You are really good at asking yourself questions when you
Mm-hmm.
need to make decisions. And I think that's kind of like, that's what I pulled on in that moment. I was like, what do I need to do to be okay? What do I need to do to
Yes.
move forward confidently? Because I have things I'm trying to do, and this is not going to stop me. This job is
Exactly.
not stopping me from doing
Yes.
the things I want to do. So for me, maybe that's a joy practice too, is asking yourself, what do I need in this moment to be okay?
Mm-hmm. And to know that you are taking care of you,
Hmm.
that you can trust yourself to help you get to the next stage, get to the next step, get to the next day. Like that is such a gift. And it's like you said, the more you practice it, the more you put that into play, the more you give yourself the grace when there is calamity or strife, or you just don't know what to do. To give yourself that grace and then to ask yourself, okay, what do you need? What do you need? Not what other people expect you to
Yeah.
do. How should other people, what are other people expecting you to respond to this? No, what do you need? And the fact that you chose something that was so personal, like I have goosebumps, that brings me joy. So
Oh,
again, full joy circle.
yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Because that's the thing. It's like this moment that could have just been a horrible thing. It ended up, not only did I have a positive week and experience, but all my friends, they were like, this is fun. This was great. They all had a fun experience and got to go to a party.
Mhm. And what you did was planted a seed for them that if they're ever in that situation or
Yeah.
anything that too, they have a blueprint now. So joy continues to give. Joy shows up in different ways, and that like A plus. Like I love that. A making room part. Like that is amazing. I love it.
So everyone should, hey, you don't have to at the beginning of the year host a making room party and maybe tell your friends, I want to make room for more joy in my life. And being with y'all brings me joy.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We're all making room for joy. You're spreading
I'll
the
make
joy.
room for joy.
And then
Yes.
order cards to give everyone at the party from now to
Exactly.
timely.
Or you can order cards and then you can have a card sending session at the making room party.
Yep.
Like, love it. Yep.
Yeah. Full circle. I'm like, oh, I feel like we need a t-shirt. Like joy is the gift that keeps on giving.
You just all of those things are so good. And I think that thoughts like that, actions like that are what we can use to combat the fact that there's a scarcity of joy,
Yeah.
right? You see that no joy shows up and joy shows up in different ways and it you make it personal and you make it intimate for you. It doesn't have to look like something very expensive. It doesn't have to look like something very elaborative. It's just what makes me feel alive in this moment? What makes me feel golden? And I think what you said you did in your transition like that That's fantastic. And that's exactly the idea that I think that if we have more of that, we'll see like resilience and just a more positive outlook when we're going through things in life kind of grow a little bit more.
Yeah. And it's almost like what you're like we are asking like what we're asking of ourselves and others is to embrace that vulnerability that's inherent in joy. Joy is a vulnerable emotion. It's
Mm-hmm.
not some, warm fuzzy like it's warm and fuzzy, but it's vulnerable. It's hard. And I think by sometimes we're afraid if we embrace it in those times that we're ignoring the hard part of it. And that's not what it is, at least in my situation. That's not how I was embraced. That's not how I was using it. It wasn't let's ignore the hard, but it's life is always going to be hard. Like we're guaranteed to
Mm-hmm.
have challenges and we're guaranteed that one day we will die. And there's not much else that's guaranteed in this world.
Right.
So, it's like let's capture some joy when we can. And when life is hard, leaning on that joy isn't an escape or a way to ignore the problem, but it's actually saying, I'm very aware of what this problem is, and I'm making a plan to move forward while knowing that problem exists.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I really love greeting cards because typically for most of us, we probably have like a greeting card drawer in our house, right? Like
Yep.
after we get cards, you may put them up on your mantle, but you may just sometimes if you just go back and look at those cards and when you receive the card, maybe it was for your birthday and someone wrote a sweet message. Yeah, your joy was probably at, 100% during your birthday. But then let's say, 2 or 3 months later, something happens. Like you feel like you are in maybe a darker spot than you were for your birthday when it was a celebration time. Going back and look at that message and it just revives those good feelings. And so you say you feeling a joy reserve and then a card or something tangible helps to remind you of those joy reserves. Life happens. I would never say that, if you just focus on joy, everything good will happen
Yeah.
in your life. Like, no, but joy is I think of joy as in spite of what is going on. I have
Yes.
joy. And this is how I can kind of give myself a hug during those dark times.
Oh, I love that. It does feel like a hug. You're right.
Mhm,
That box, I have that box that you mentioned, that box of cards. It's in my
mhm,
room. I just got some cards yesterday. I need to add to it.
mhm,
And it really does feel like a hug.
mhm,
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like when you're sitting there doubting yourself, you don't have the joy. It's a hug to say, it's okay. You can keep going. I
mhm,
always tell myself when it gets really hard, I'm like, what's the one thing? What's the next one step? What is like, just do that one next thing and you'll
mhm.
get through. And that's sometimes what we need to be reminded of.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay.
it's okay if you're not always feeling the joy. It's just, what are some of those practices to keep coming back to it? How do you bring yourself back to it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much. I feel
Thank
the joy
you.
from talking to you today.
I love every time we talk and we link up. I talk about joy all the time, but you reflect that too. And so I'm telling you, like I'm still stuck on the making room party. Like I
Oh,
cannot go anywhere else in my head. But fantastic. Fantastic.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you for being here, for sharing about your life, your joy, all the wonderful products that you create, how you bring joy to people every day. It really is such an honor to talk to you. And I know we talked about this on the last episode, but could you just remind folks how they could connect with you?
Yeah, so if you want to introduce some joyful cards and confetti and all the things in your life, you can go to announcedivinely.com. If you live on Etsy, you can find Announce Divinely at Announce Divine, no Ly on Etsy. But also, let's link up on Instagram at Announce Divinely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here,
Thank you for having
everyone.
me, Rachel.
Oh, yes. This has been wonderful. Just highlighted my day. Everyone, go find Ebony at Announced Divinely. Check out some of those cards and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.